Oh, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Today we're going to be talking about kyanite. Now, I thought this would be a fairly simple subject to talk about, but as usual, it expands. So, just a reminder that I do put video chapters into or timing chapters into the actual description so you can jump back and forth to the areas of interest for you. And that's the same for this video today. And that will help you out. It becomes a reference point. If later on you're looking at particular crystals, you can always come back to the slides and go to the one that actually appeals to you. Before I get into it today, though, I just want to obviously acknowledge our return visitors and any new visitors and say thank you for being part of my journey. I truly appreciate you being part of this journey. And obviously, if you like the content, please click the like button, just help me out there. Do consider subscribing. Of course, that's up to you because some people don't like getting notified, which I think actually you've got to click the button to get notified anyway, but at least consider subscribing to the channel if you like the content. Anyway, without further ado, let's start looking at kyanite, and you will see why it became a bigger video than I initially thought it was going to be. And largely the reason why the video is bigger than I originally thought was because, of course, I'm familiar with blue kyanite. I've also seen the other colours, but I haven't actually used them, considered buying them at many different times. And in fact, actually making these videos makes me actually want to go out and buy one of each. The problem is, just so you know, I actually am finding really good prices and suppliers, but I've got to buy bulk. If I want to get these good prices from these verifiable retailers, if you like, they're actually wholesalers. They're the import exporters. And that means I've got to pay, buy them in bulk, but whatever anyway. I'm looking at all these different crystals and thinking, oh, I'm just about salivating. But anyway, my experiences have been with the blue, and it is a crystal that I absolutely love. Not just because of the way that it looks, but because of the metaphysical properties, which I believe, of course, that these are real. So, I have to put that disclaimer there that, there's no science to support the metaphysical properties of a crystal, and this is the same for kyanite. So when I say that I have experienced metaphysical benefits from a crystal, and I'll let you know the ones that I haven't, that is my belief. I can't say it with any authority as in scientific background. And sometimes what I find is when I'm looking at the attributes of a crystal, that there's actually claims that it does X and Y, which have not been part of my experience. So I'm very clear with what I believe I experienced and what other people say. And this is where I encourage you to actually put your experiences in, because it helps to really expand the pool of information. Because just for the simple fact, say, kyanite, the blue kyanite, is apparently associated with dreams. We'll talk about that in a little while. I initially thought that's not been my experience. In hindsight now, upon reflection, it may have been. But for you, it might definitely be up there. It might have been your number one experience when using blue kyanite. But anyway, let's go back to what it is about kyanite in general, from an overall perspective, regardless of the colour kyanite that you buy, is they're all attributed to be what we call self-cleansers. You don't need to have a cleansing rock to put your kyanite on as part of cleansing them and charging them, and you don't need to recharge them in the same way that you do with the other crystals. You don't need to put them out in moonlight. You don't need to do any ceremony or whatever practice that it is, whether it's saging and that kind of thing. You don't need to do any of this stuff with kyanite because it will take care of itself. So what I've tried to do with these particular images here that you can see is show you how they form. You can see the blue is what we call blades. Same with the green, actually. The green kyanite and the orange kyanite are all called blades, as is the pink. And we can see when we look at the pink and the blue images that they form on a host rock. We can also see with the yellow, I really like that to show you the texture. This is what kyanite in the rough looks like. We call it kyanite in the rough when it's just pulled out the ground, when it hasn't been treated with anything, when it hasn't been polished. It is actually really quite rough, and it's got these edges on it that you can see. Now, sometimes whether it is blue, green, I've seen blue, green, and black fishtails. These are the ones, the black is, I call it fishtails. I think sometimes people call it fishtails or fans, okay? So there's two different ways of naming that. But I have seen, anyway, fans in blue, green, and black. If I recall correctly, I've seen orange fans as well, but I don't think the orange fans that I saw were as deep an orange as what we're seeing in this image here. So that's the other thing, is regardless of the colour of the kyanite, you're going to get it in different shades and hues. Now, got to have a laugh about this, because I keep telling you people, I am I'm just a crystal glutton. I've had to use huge self-control over the years to stop buying and to stop having them everywhere. Once I stopped retailing them, I decided to cut back and to exhibit some self-control. But as I do these videos, it's like, certainly temptation is in my way. I would consider mortgaging my grandmother for one of each of these specimens. But having said that, remember the key words, I'd consider it. I never would. Besides which they've passed away. But moving on. So from a general perspective, when we talk about kyanite, it is associated, if you do your research and that kind of stuff, and I've got a number of books. So just for your information, this is not guided information I'm giving you here. This is research information when we talk about the Zodiac associations. Kyanite in general is supposed to be beneficial for those people who are Aries, Libra, and Taurus. But I would say don't let that deter you if that's not your star sign, because I'm neither or none of those. And I love it. I find it beneficial for anybody. And if you're drawn to it, then buy it. If you think you're going to benefit from it, go for it. Don't let your star sign stop you. So when it comes to the metaphysical attributes of kyanite, it does vary somewhat between the colours. So for this video, what I'm going to do is talk about blue kyanite in the first instance, or basically just summarise the attributes. Then I'll speak directly about the blue, because that's where I've got my experience, and then I'll do some slides about the other colours and what you can expect from them. And of course, these are all going to have timing in the description. You can go straight onto them. So from a metaphysical overview, if we're talking about blue kyanite, of course, it's got the main attributes that we talked about, which is the self-cleansing and self-charging. But from where I sit, my experience is that it is definitely a stone of peace and calming. Some people will refer to it as, when you hold this crystal, it feels as though you're wrapped in an embrace. And to be honest, I think most people that are holding it probably, if they're not particularly energy aware, might not recognize this. I think that we become aware of this calming embrace when we are in the extremes of despair and anguish. So certainly when it relates to grief, in my experience, and I keep reiterating this, it certainly calmed and soothed grief. It also helps to eliminate confusion, which this is associated. These are the ideas that are associated with grief and anguish, is we're confused. We don't understand. Why has this happened? These kind of things. If we're frustrated, it's like, we didn't deserve this, so we get a bit angry. Frustration is shall we say, soothed as well. It becomes calmed down. When we're deeply frustrated and grieving, of course, our capacity to articulate and communicate can become compromised. And sometimes you will notice, if you actually take the time to look, some of the people who speak quite aggressively don't see that they're being aggressive. They just have a lot of anger in their aura, and they have a very blunt, direct way of communicating, and their style might be perceived as aggressive by other people. So when it comes to self-expression, verbalizing, and this kind of stuff, then blue kyanite is going to assist with that as well, assist the capacity to communicate in positive ways. Now, the interesting thing for me, and I'm going to explain this to you in a moment with my personal story of using blue kyanite, is this aspect of creativity. I want to say I'm not sure about the past life recall and heal. If this is something you've experienced, please let us know. Or if you have meditated with Blue Kyanite to try and get an idea about where your past life has gone or whatever, that kind of thing, just let me know. So the reason why, I'll go into this little bit of this is my personal story, how I came to know about Blue Kyanite. Look, it is also associated with accessing the subconscious and your psychic gifts. So that's the connection of your third eye and your crown chakra, so that you can have this deep understanding. But the business of art and creativity is extremely relevant to my story. You're going to hear about that shortly. Before we talk about that, though, let's take a look at the metaphysical, the mineral attributes, because I understand that actually you can find on the market fake kyanite. I don't know how the heck they do it. Probably the transparent stuff that they're selling as kyanite. I would imagine that that's easier to make, because it would just be coloured glass, let's be real. So, knowing the mineral information and how the crystal is formed, particularly kyanite, helps us to identify to a certain extent when we're buying. We understand the formation, we know what we can expect when we're actually doing our purchasing. But realistically, the fakes are now so good when it comes to even kyanite. The only real way that you're going to know, if in doubt, is to actually go and get it tested. But I must say, based on my observations, it would only actually be those ones that are transparent, the clear forms of kyanite, where a person might come into difficulty as far as identifying if it's the real McCoy or not. But excuse me for swallowing, I've got a few tips for you in a moment. So the background with how kyanite is formed is that it's an aluminium silicate. If you're anything like me, I've got no idea what that actually means because I'm not a geologist. You can do your research on it. If you understand what this means, come and let us know. Like, my understanding basically on my research of the mineral information is that it's not a super hard crystal. You can see here that it's rated at between 4.5 to 7. So sometimes it's harder, shall we say, or more hardy, but certain forms of kyanite are going to be particularly soft and easily damaged. Now, the reason I've put typically blue is because blue is the primary coloured kyanite that we find. It's the most common. The other thing is that it grows on a host rock, and it is impacted by temperature and pressure, and it generally will form as the blades that we saw in the other video, on the other slide. Now, to put this into perspective, I did a bit of delving, and what it is that the rock that kyanite grows from, there's a couple of different forms, and I've put this image here. I think it's pronounced as gneiss, right? So what it is, it develops beneath the Earth's surface. You have to mine it, dig quarries to pull it out. It's used for all sorts of things, not just jewellery, by the way, but in fact, actually, I was surprised by the amount of things that kyanite is actually used for in the manufacture of other items that we use. But either way, it's found beneath the Earth's surface. You usually dig quarries or whatever and pull it out. And the host rock that it grows on is like gneiss. There's another one that it grows on as well. But either way, these are what is called metamorphic rocks. Okay, the host rock is metamorphic. And what this means is that they grow apparently in between the plates, and they, to some extent, are malleable. They're affected by the pressure of the Earth's movement. And if you're aware of any form of geology, is that beneath the Earth's surface, of course, we have this molten layer of rock that is what goes into volcanoes basically and sprays out everywhere. But anyway, so round about the molten level, you get movements and shifts and this kind of stuff and variations in temperature, and these will impact on the host rock that kyanite grows on. The reason I put the image up of gneiss was because you can see here that it's got layers. It actually is subject to pressure as well, and these layers, the colours and that kind of stuff, and particularly with kyanite, the colours are influenced by the other minerals that are in the ground. So offhand or off the cuff, what I do remember is that the orange is apparently due to magnesium in the Earth's surface. That's what gives it the orange look. From memory, and I may be incorrect here, and I'm certainly open to correction, anything that's got green in it, I believe, has got copper as part of its formation, because copper in its natural state is actually green as an ore body. So what we've got here is that when you've got kyanite that's growing on a host rock that gets layers and it's subject to change and impacted by the plates, the movement of the plates, I forgot to say that, as the earth plates shift, that says impacts on this host rock. Now it also impacts on the kyanite, and this is why we get the folds, which I call striations, in the crystals. Okay, so just a little bit of a tidbit here is that when I was doing my research, I saw now, in modern retail, we have what is called rainbow kyanite. Now that, just for your information, is manufactured. I don't know exactly how it's manufactured, but I did read that it is kyanite that has been coated with titanium. So sometimes you'll find it referred to as titanium kyanite. And what I put some notes here. It's because they are vapor plated with a thin layer of titanium and or a couple of other metal oxides, which give the different effects. So from my perspective here, I'm not going to be talking about any metaphysical properties that are associated with rainbow kyanite, because it's not the genuine artifact, I guess. And if it's got properties, then it must be the original, the original colour kyanite. I have to wonder if titanium or the rainbow is created upon black kyanite. Just a thought. So when it comes to the buying tips for when you're buying kyanite, I've put up this image here with a cross through it of green kyanite blades strung together. And the reason I put a cross over it is obviously the person that's selling this particular kyanite, they're all blades and they've strung them together to protect them from damage during transport. Now, from a metaphysical perspective, people such as myself, we don't care. We, honest to God, do not care if they break a little bit on the way to the destination. And this is because if they break, we consider that it was meant to break. I mean, look, you wouldn't just throw them in a box and chuck them in the post. You would put in a certain amount of protection to stop them moving around, maybe some paper or whatever, just to keep them reasonably secure in the box as they travel. And if you've taken a certain amount of care with the packing, then they're not going to get super damaged on the way over. But I would rather have, and of course I'm speaking for myself, you might be different, let us know. I would rather have undrilled kyanite blades in bulk that have split during the transportation process, as opposed to having them drilled and strung together, because I believe that drilling them is a step in the process that's unnecessary. So if you're a wholesaler out there and selling some blades, please check with your buyer before you go as far as stringing them together, because look, the thing is, I believe, and I would imagine a lot of people believe, that if kyanite splits because it is fragile, this is because it's meant to split and it is meant to go. Some of us do believe, and I have tendencies to believe as well, that sometimes a specific crystal is meant to go to a certain person. So if it breaks down into a smaller bit, it might be meant to be gifted to somebody as opposed to sold to somebody. Just a thought there. But anyway, in regard to the other images, I've put them up to give you a bit of an idea. When we look at the ring here on the finger on the left-hand side down the bottom, to me, I feel confident in saying that's a genuine piece of kyanite. Not a bad bit at all. Some people might consider that to be an inferior type of kyanite, and by that I mean it depends on the purposes that they're hoping to get to buy the kyanite. So let's look at, say, the pendants that we've got there. I'm going to call those lines, which is actually the layers that we talked about in the mineral formation, I'm going to call them the striations. So what we can see with the pendant is that you've got a more dark blue than the light blue of the ring. it's got variations of the colour, which is true to the formation, the natural kyanite, when we're looking at it in the raw. So this is polished. There's a certain level of transparency. I'm confident to say that that is the genuine article as well, because that is too hard to actually recreate. I believe, I could be wrong, let me know if you know. I believe that one's genuine blue. Now, the thing is, though, I also understand that when it comes to buying kyanite now as well, that some people, particularly jewelers, prefer to have a little bit of imperfection, because this imperfection helps to identify this as being the genuine crystal. And this is why I say I'm confident, fairly confident, let's say 99.9% confident, the pendants are the genuine article. The one that I'm not sure is genuine is actually the one on the right-hand side where we see these blocks. Now, that's because they look too smooth. Now, they could have been sanded. They might be the real McCoy. They could have been sanded. They could have been cut. But it just... Look, even if it's genuine, that's not the kind of kyanite that I would be interested in buying. Once again, this is all down to personal preference, so I look forward to your comments. What I've done also here to show you different types of kyanite is this image down the bottom on the right hand side, this is actually called teal kyanite, and I wasn't aware that this even existed. This is so incredibly rare that I am actually not even going to talk about its properties, because I would be hazarding a guess and just using my own intuition, if you like, that because of the teal colour to it, that this is probably suited towards people that work with marine life, animals, anything to do with ocean, perhaps telepathy, perhaps communication. Certainly it will carry some of the blue qualities with it as far as metaphysical goes. But the reason why I'm not going to talk about it particularly is because of the cost of it. It is so very rare. Apparently it is only found in Australia, and the prices that I saw for just these tiniest little items can be about $5,000 each. Now, this is obviously for the best quality. The best quality would be those ones that are on the right-hand side of the image. And just to give you an idea of how big or small these items are, these items are sitting on plasticine to secure them upright for the photographs. What I would recommend for people, if they were looking to buy this, if it was actually in your budget, that you go to the gem houses where they actually sell it. If you like the idea of having it made into jewellery, you definitely want to be buying from a reputable buyer. And I did see online that there are gem and auction houses. Now, they, as far as I know within the industry in Australia, what happens is the prospectors, we call them the prospectors, the people that go out there and dig them up, the prospectors need somewhere to retail their items. So quite often a prospector will go out, do a dig. They have to have licenses to be able to dig and prospect, and they have to be able to prove evidence, all of that kind of stuff, particularly when the selling occurs. So if you're buying from a reputable gem house, there's not going to be an issue that what you've got is the real deal. If you're buying from an online retailer, you might want to see proof of where it was found and that kind of stuff. I'm no expert on that. Somebody might be able to help us out. Okay, so the last image I want to talk about is these, what we would call tumbled. Now, as a buyer, I really don't like the idea of buying tumbled kyanite. To me, it's kind of an insult to it, but that just could be me being over the top. To me, kyanite doesn't need to be polished or tumbled, not to have its benefits. Okay, so anyway, I would say here that when we're looking at the tumbles, we're looking at some fairly inferior type of kyanite, because it just looks dirty, doesn't it? It doesn't have the same pretty blue that we have on the ring. However, as always, please let us know your feedback. You might be the sort of person that likes to have kyanite like this. I would rather definitely have it in the blades or the fan fishtails. So this video is getting pretty long. Rather than repeat stuff, I've just put in here what the spiritual metaphysical benefits are associated with blue. The only one that I would say, no, I wouldn't say that I disagree with. I would say that I never used the crystal, my Blue Kyanite, for interdimensional astral travel or to facilitate it. But at the same time, when I cast my mind back to when I was using it back in the day, I certainly did have a lot of conscious dream recollection. I got a lot of messages via my dreams. Um, the astral travel I am aware of, that people would say to me that I was actually very active astrally at the time. Um, so perhaps there is a truth to that. I didn't use it to try and do a past life recall. So I'm interested if you have and what your experiences were. So, with this one, I'm being a bit open minded because these are not my experiences. What I will say is that some people claim that blue kyanite will help with cellular regeneration. And if people are struggling with sleep issues such as insomnia, it's said to promote healthy sleep or good quality sleep and actually to improve and heal insomnia. Now, as I say, this is not part of my experience, and given that I was actually using and working with kyanite last night, I didn't actually have a good night's sleep. But there's a big but with this, and this is me injecting my humour. But of course, I have the little puppy. If people are aware, Toby, my little man, was waking me from about 4 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. before I actually got a bit cross with him and pushed him outside the door. So let's say I didn't find improved sleep last night. So for me, my positive experiences of kyanite and what I love about it is actually more related with the emotional and thinking aspects and attributes. And this, of course, I'll tell you, this is where you're going to hear my little story about being introduced to it in a little while. But certainly I found it to be transformative in relation to grief and frustration. Um, I wouldn't go as far, actually, where some people claim that it eliminates confusion. I would say it didn't eliminate my confusion, but it certainly helped me to release resistance and accept that there are some things that I didn't have answers for, and they would be revealed throughout the passage of time. So when we look at that, putting that into perspective, we're seeing a change here of behaviour and thinking patterns. That release of resistance was a change for me. As far as self-expression goes, yes, it is credited with enhancing and strengthening our vocal communication and even our written communication, any way that we actually express our unique individuality. And this is where it's linked into creativity, because creativity is part of what leads to our self-expression. Okay, this is our personal identity, and this is why kyanite is actually recommended to be beneficial to artists, anybody that is doing any form of personal expression. And this could be in crafts. I mean, you might be a cross stitcher, you might be a baker, baking cakes, you could be a gardener, whatever. Everybody expresses in their own unique way. And so kyanite is credited with helping people to be creative in how they express. Now, this is where it actually for me, the proof is in the telling of this particular story. I hope it's interesting to you anyway. I came across kyanite at a time, I'll give you the background. I had started doing art, and I was very privileged to actually be accepted by an artist. He was very, very good in the town that I lived in, and he was delivering classes. So it was a real honour to be actually accepted as a student. So I'd booked in with him, and I had gone, I think, to 1 or 2 sessions. And the guy was, as it turns out, extremely antisocial. He didn't enjoy being around people as a rule. So this is why student selection was a really selective thing for him. Now, I'd never had any formal training in art. I'd only just started doing it. And I'm not going to go too far into that. I'm going to say that, look, I was accepted into this class. I knew nothing about the guy. I knew that he was antisocial and very particular about visits, because he lived outside of the town itself. To be able to catch up with him and go to his property, you had to drive out of town. It was set in remote bushlands, if you like, not remote as in the desert, but outside of town, not in an area where people would drive past. So this was all part of protecting his privacy. So I was given the instruction right from the get-go that don't turn up to his property, because he just doesn't accept that. He considers that to be intrusive. Now, what happened was I had a family crisis, and it was gut-wrenching. I was in absolute anguish over it, and I was unable to control my tears. I was really lost in it, okay? I was struggling to get out of bed, and I had lost all capacity to function. And when I say I had no control over my tears, I really didn't. This is one of the reasons why I wasn't going out, was because I could just be walking around and my whole body and system would break down in these tears that would flow and flow. So anyway, what happened was, in between tears and sobbing and all the rest of it, I decided that I actually needed to go and say thank you to the artist. I'm not going to name him here, and cancel my classes with him, and certainly postpone them, because I felt that I would just be, a dead weight of emotion should I turn up anyway. Anyway, so the issue was I couldn't find his phone number. So I drove out to his property, and as I was driving out, I was thinking, oh my God, he's going to be so unhappy about this. And at the same time, it was, really attempting to do a little bit of self-mastery, control myself so that I could present and say thank you very much and be polite. The problem was, as I've turned up into his property, and there was no problem at the end of the day, but let's go through it as I was having that experience. The problem for me was, as I've turned up, he's heard the car and he's not been happy. And I've seen him come out looking quite disturbed that somebody has turned up at his property uninvited and unwelcome. And it was actually a couple of hours before my class. So when he sees it's me, his face gets even more cross looking, because like, well, how dare she? What's she doing this about? So the first thing I did to the man was actually apologise and say, look, I'm really sorry for coming out at this time. I've got some family stuff going on, couldn't find your phone number, couldn't call you, but didn't want to let you down, letting you know I'm not going to be attending tonight. And in fact, I actually should be withdrawing. Now, during this conversation, I'm seeing a shift in this guy's behaviour and his response to me. And somewhere in there, very quickly, he said, are you okay? Well, that was it. If anybody's ever been in crisis and full of anguish, that's your undoing. So he said, are you okay? And the tears just came pouring out like a waterfall. And I said, not really, as you do. This is why I can't come tonight, actually. And he's just said, wait there. And he's run inside and he's come out. He's grabbed my hand, he's pressed a bit of kyanite into it, blue kyanite, if you don't mind, a blade. And he said, this is my piece, straight off the get-go. This is my piece, you can't have it, but you can use it right now, okay? Now, my experience of this was, as he has pressed this in my hand, it was almost instantaneous. I wouldn't say instantaneous like fraction of a second. I would say within about 30 seconds to a minute, there was a change in my emotional response, where I was able to start to control my sobs, to control my emotions. And when I say control, release, okay, the release of it. And I was calmed. And having said that, the guy actually was like, no, you keep holding it. So I think I held it all told for about 10 minutes, and then we were able to have a conversation. But the other part of the conversation was, once again, I was consumed with guilt, because while I was holding it in my hand, I actually felt it break, right? So my fist was closed around the blade, not super tight, I might add, but I felt it break in my hand. And then it was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to buy you another piece. I just broke your kyanite. And I've handed it back. And this is a thing with a kyanite blade, okay? He has looked at it. And of course, he was a little bit disappointed, because clearly it's his favourite piece of kyanite. And he's looked at it and he's gone, oh, okay. He said, well, you know what? He said, this is my piece now. He said, and this is yours. He said, that's why they break. He said, is when it's supposed to be passed on. He said, so you're supposed to take this little piece home with you. Now, just to put this into perspective, I do believe this too, by the way, and this is why I say about the blades and tying them together. You don't need to do that. So anyway, I did take this little piece of kyanite home. You don't need to have a great big piece of kyanite for it to work. But I did end up buying a lot of blue kyanite. So I would have a little bit in my purse. I had some in my house. I put some under my pillow at night, all of that kind of stuff. I used to wear it, some in my bra, whatever, because I found it to be such a magical crystal. So that's my experience of the blue. And I think what is really interesting within that is I was introduced to it by an artist as well. So there you go. So when it comes to the chakras, you can pretty well say kyanite is linked to the chakra of the same colour, or whatever colour that it represents. So for the blue kyanite, because it's got the shades of blue, if you've got one that's more the light blue, like the ring in the buying tips, that's going to be focused more on the throat chakra and expression and peace and calm and nurturing. If it's got a lot of the darker blue in it as well, this one's going to be focused, the ones that say have light and dark blue, that's going to be a mixture of the throat chakra properties, as well as the capacity to see and understand the brow chakra, right? When we talk about ones like the teal, you're looking at the heart combined with the throat. So you're looking at peaceful communication. This is why I say telepathy may actually be involved in this when we're talking about the teal, because it's got the green. Some of them have got more of the blue than the green itself, but there is this forgiveness, overcoming of trauma, release of anxiety, self-expression, communication, all of that stuff. Absolutely beautiful. The yellow, of course, is going to be associated with the qualities of faith, trust, hope, that kind of thing, but I'm not going to talk too much about them right now. And this is because I want to now talk about with you, first of all, we'll look at caring for crystals and the messages, but then we're going to talk about basically just an overview of each of the other forms of kyanite. So just to recap, I do see kyanite for sale as jewellery, and I have actually got some earrings and stuff like that are made of kyanite. I don't really like seeing kyanite as jewellery, but probably this is because I just appreciate the raw beauty of kyanite, and I just don't think it's necessary. And also because it wastes, whenever they make jewellery, they're actually cutting away parts of a crystal and turning it into dust. The more you manufacture it, the more waste you've got involved. And I just love, I guess, the benefits of nature. I love the bounty of Mother Nature, shall we say. So as far as using it for cleansing other crystals, look, I would say I would not actually be putting crystals on top of kyanite, because I would be concerned about breaking it unnecessarily. But I would, and I have done, placed a smaller piece of kyanite on top of other crystals that need to be cleansed. My favourite forms, as I said, is the fan and the blade. Excuse me as I click my tongue. Now, I've put this image in like that because I want you to see how to use kyanite. It's actually really important that if you've got a kyanite blade, that you actually know how to hold it. So if you're going to use it, as I did when balancing the grief and that kind of stuff, you hold it in your non-writing hand, and you wouldn't have, where that blade is crossing over all of the fingers, that's not what you do. You actually put it in the center of your palm, and basically the bladed point that you can see there, that goes out and points along your middleman, if you like. So you hold it like that. You hold it in your hand, and then you just allow the energy to come in, and that's how it works. So usually, if you were to turn that crystal over, I would imagine there'll be like another layer coming out underneath it, if that makes sense. If you've got questions, ask, all right? And I will potentially try and get a better image. Oh, yes. So I've just looked at my notes here. When I say allow the energy in, if you are aware of it, and I think when you're in this grief state that I was, grief and anguish, I actually felt energy pulsate up my arm. So I consider it to be a very powerful crystal. Anyway, look, would I have kyanite in the environment as an ornament? Oh, yes, absolutely I would. Some of those great big wonderful amazing clusters, oh yes, absolutely beautiful. And I do believe that they provide a level of ambient peaceful energy to the room as well, and probably cleanse and clear the environment as well. But let me know your thoughts. So in regard to kyanite, because it has a kind of delicate formation. You will have seen with the other slides that, quite often you get a crystalline clear quartz type, I think it's clear quartz actually, in between the blades. They're the ones that break and fragment easily, and that's okay because that just, I don't know, it seems to give it a more delectable emotional sensation or whatever. But so the idea of caring for your crystals is that they are not suitable for water immersion. Okay, that means you don't stick them in a tub of water. But as self cleansers, the only time you would really need to actually clean them is if they start to gather dust. Okay, in which case you can actually put them underwater and potentially dry them with a soft cloth. You wouldn't use harsh chemicals on them though. They don't need to be washed in soapy water. Just a bit of a rinse off, get the dust off, give them a bit of a dry. Okay, but so this I think will make you laugh. I say all of this, but I have historically accidentally put kyanite through the washing machine with my clothes because I've had it in a pocket and forgot to check the pockets. And surprisingly, it survived, okay? So I guess as long as you're not doing it all the time, then it's going to be okay. You would also take your jewellery off. If you've got kyanite jewellery, I wouldn't advise using it in the shower. And not so much because it might fragment, but basically because it's vulnerable to sudden changes in temperature and long-term exposure to heat or whatever. If you're going from a hot environment to a cool environment, basically because of the quality of the crystal itself, because that metamorphic aspect, you can actually discolor your kyanite apparently. And the same reason this exposure to temperature is why you actually wouldn't put your kyanite outside, okay? Certainly not in extreme weather conditions. I mean, you could probably put it out under moonlight. You wouldn't put it out under sunlight. It doesn't need recharging anyway, but you would not put it out under sunlight, certainly in Australia, because it's going to fade the colours, okay? You could use sage if you're into the sage. You could do that. Do you have a means? Do you cleanse your kyanite, and how do you do it? Feel free to let us know. So generally speaking, when we talk about the black crystals, the ones that are really quite powerful, and this includes kyanite, we're talking about a connection to the earth star and the base chakras, where there becomes an alignment between the earth star, shall we say, and the angelic realms, the very higher realms of the chakras. So there becomes this alignment, and this promotes stability within self. This is not being off with the fairies in your mind, being grounded in reality, but in positive ways, and basically giving the person the courage, resilience, and wisdom that they need to be able to have the strength to act upon their beliefs, shall we say, their personal values. The other thing is too that with these strong black crystals, and as I say, kyanite too, we're talking about an attribute, shall we say, of boundary and auric protection. So there becomes this protection that prevents any negative environmental influences impacting upon your own personal sense of well-being and stability. Other attributes of black kyanite include expanding a person's perspective in regard to problems and problem solving. If you've got a lot of conflict around you, and of course this is personal conflicts, it could be in your workplace or whatever, then you would wear the black kyanite. If you've got to go into a meeting with a T, if you've got to go in for a meeting where you need to negotiate positive or suitable outcomes, you're looking for that happy, healthy resolution for everybody, well, then you would wear black kyanite into these meetings. And part of this is about learning how to compromise, and the black kyanite is attributed to assist with this as well, realigning of ideals and being able to work towards serving the highest good. Now, the other thing is too, and I'm interested in your perspective on this as well, is psychic attack. So where we talk about protection from enemies, in quotation marks, I believe we're actually referring to protecting the aura against psychic attack. Now, psychic attack doesn't have to be malicious. It can be actually when you're in conflict with another person and they're thinking all sorts of nasties about you, and it, when we think about a person, the thoughts that we have actually have energy attached to them. So if you think or believe that you're in a situation where somebody is holding unkind thoughts to you, then you could use black kyanite as a form of protecting against any form of carrying these thoughts into your own aura or taking them on board. So I don't have personal experience of using the orange kyanite. I actually would love to have part of, or to have it in my collection as part of it, because I tend to associate it more with creativity and being able to open up to your creative expression, shall we say. But there is a lot of attributes that are given to orange kyanite. I just would be interested to know, when we talk about transformation of the DNA and facilitation of the high etheric energies into our DNA for physical evolutionary changes, I actually see that not only as a bit of a mouthful, but actually about the fact that working with the orange kyanite, and you might become aware that after you start working with it, that suddenly you've got an interest in what's happening on the planet, and suddenly you start making some really big changes in your life about what you can actively be doing. So if you've worked with orange kyanite, please let me know your experiences, and this will help me develop some understanding about it. When it comes to the inner child, this is probably, you would say that the orange is recommended for people who have got a pretty tawdry childhood, shall we say. They may have been victims of child abuse and had a lot of suffering, perhaps neglect and rejected by parents and all of this kind of stuff. If they've got pain associated with their childhood, that becomes what we call inner child issues. And so somebody with that kind of experience, they could work with the orange kyanite as part of healing those issues, and that might be developing an understanding and awareness of what was going on with their parents, because at the end of the day, children don't do anything that warrants their parents mistreating them. And so it can be working out how their parents have transferred and projected their issues upon them. And it might even be a case of discovering their divine path, aligning with their divine plan, and finding out that actually they chose their parents because they needed to experience this for whatever reasons. It could have been the repayment of karmic debt. I'm just throwing ideas out here. I'm not saying that this is what it is, but it might help to explore this. The other, and I can see the rationale of this, that because of it being orange, this business of removing negative energy, healing old wounds, and transforming emotional blockages through the release of fear, that makes sense to me, because we are talking about an orange crystal that is linked with the sacral chakra. And same with transforming aggressive communication into positive self-expression. This is all functions of the sacral chakra, so that makes sense to me. And when we talk about psychic development, well, to be able to progress and harness our powers, shall we say, and to be open to reliable clairvoyance, shall we say, and the other clairs or psychic gifts, there needs to be this release of fear, because what we fear, we create. So if you are bound by fear and expecting to see all sorts of fearful things, if you open up your clairvoyance while you're full of fear, this is what you're going to see. But if you've released your fear and you've been able to progress to this perspective where you trust the divine, you trust the creator, you trust your guides, that they will never take you anywhere fearful or harmful, then you're able to let go of fear. So this is where orange kyanite, I can see, would be very beneficial to those people seeking to develop their gifts and to step into their personal power. So there comes, I don't believe any surprises that yellow kyanite is associated with the solar plexus chakra and the sacral, because you're talking about a bit of a crossover there anyway when it comes to function of the chakras at certain times. But I suppose when we talk about yellow kyanite, I would love to work with this one as well. basically the idea is that it helps to build your self-confidence, encourages creativity, assists in the learning process, where we really learn from the past, and that way we can carry these lessons into our future decision making. And so therefore it does promote inner understanding, self-awareness and stability. As I say, I haven't used it, but these are the attributes that I've seen other people provide to them. I can believe, I can understand it, is where I'm going. I can also understand that it is relevant to psychic development, but what I find interesting is it's recommended if people are doing past life regression or attempting to astral travel. Now, I've never used, obviously, yellow kyanite for these things, but this opens the door for me to have a conversation about when and why we would do a past life regression. And a past life regression, in my experience, I have done it, not using yellow kyanite, was when I became aware that I had a fear, and I had nothing to indicate to me what this fear was, and it was paralyzing, I must admit. I'm quite happy to share it with you. I had what we call an unholy fear of blood. If I saw blood, I was out, like, out for the count. I would drop, and I couldn't think of a reason why. So I did a past life regression to identify the source of my fear. And I actually got the answer, by the way. And it certainly, when I did the activity, this is this case of when you put things out there to the universe and you want to work with it and establish something, it will give you the answers. Certainly did for me. I thought that I was going to find it within my current physical life, basically that I must have been exposed to blood when I was a young child, and this is why I had this fear of blood. But no, actually what happened was I went back even further, and it turned out it was a previous life. So it was a past life regression I actually did, which was interesting to me. When it comes to astral traveling, I like to think that you've got a purpose for doing it. Protection, of course, and alignment of the chakras is there for all kyanite. Manifestation, of course, the difference with what I can see with using yellow kyanite for manifestation is we're not talking about planning a venture here. We're actually talking about walking the walk. This is about putting these ideas into action. So you'll have done the mapping at a different stage. Crown chakra, thought, ideas, this kind of thing. And in fact, heart chakra, following your passion. But the yellow chakra is about putting it into action and walking it. So if you're attempting to manifest something special, yellow kyanite would certainly be encouraged. I definitely want a piece of that, actually. I definitely do. I might have to buy some. If you have used it for treating anxiety or depressive type illnesses, I'd be interested in knowing your experience, because to me, to promote yellow kyanite for these conditions actually is not what I would have expected, is where I'm going. For me, I associate depression with the throat chakra and the sacral chakra. So maybe it's those links with the sacral that makes it a suitable crystal for treating depression. Not sure. But when it comes to anxiety, just so you know, I actually associate that with the higher heart chakra and also your orange chakra as well. So yeah, look, once again, maybe it does work well for anxiety and depressive type illnesses, but please do let me know if you've used it for those and what your experience was. So, rule of thumb, green crystals are generally, whether it's kyanite or any other crystal, they're associated with the heart chakra. And in regard to kyanite, this is my interpretation, this first bit, that if we were to use kyanite, it probably is actually really good for people that have had deep betrayal, heartfelt betrayal, where that heart feels like it's been split in half and broken, often associated with trauma conditions such as PTSD. So you could probably use it as part of activating your heart chakra, where you feel like you're dead on the inside in the heart, basically to activate compassion, to heal these broken feelings, to heal, because it's generally associated with betrayal as well, very heartfelt betrayal, to heal those conditions. And part of becoming forgiving, learning forgiveness, And I repeat this because it's out there a lot, you will have heard this before. It's not about saying what somebody did to you is okay. It's making a conscious decision that you are not going to let this pain or their behaviors impact on you for the rest of your life and take away the quality of your personal life because these people have done something so horrendous. And sometimes it's very immoral. When people struggle to forgive other people, it's because perhaps, well, there's no perhaps about it, they've been victims of injustice a lot of the time. So it is about the case of saying, you know what, it is what it is. I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to carry anger forward into my life. I'm going to consciously choose to live with love and kindness and compassion. And that can be a whole story on forgiveness. It's a real exercise, shall we say, to be able to forgive people that have hurt us deeply. And I believe that green kyanite would certainly be beneficial for that. So let's move that away. If you want to, I can actually do a Sunday yarning on how we would use green kyanite to promote this forgiveness, especially where there's been betrayal. For now, though, what is promoted, or green kyanite is promoted, if you're trying to facilitate a connection to basically the divine mother earth goddess, and the nature and fairy kingdom, which of course, if you've watched some of my other videos, we're talking about the divas and the nature spirits, and even actually the the animal kingdom, you may as well say, to connect with animals, to connect with the insects in the garden. When you go outside, to actually honor and respect and say thank you to the universe for the efforts of all these elements that are associated with creating the beauty that is around us when we're open to appreciate it. As with all kyanites, it's going to do an instantaneous chakra alignment. It's from a spiritual perspective, it's said to enhance your intuition and to promote emotional clarity. And when we've got emotional clarity, then we're able to make enhanced decision making, you know what I mean, to make wise decisions. We're not emotionally reacting to the problems that we come across in our day-to-day life. Now, when it comes to manifestation, this is the heart chakra, is where you would do your planning. Okay, so if there's something that you feel passionate about and drawn to be doing, but you don't know how to put the steps in process or to plan it out, then the advice is that you would use green kyanite for this. The interesting thing that I find too is that through using green kyanite, it's said that you're going to be able to expand your capacity to feel joy and happiness and to have fun again, which makes sense if you've really suffered. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I would recommend people that have emotional dysregulation. Basically, yeah, look, they could work with the green, the blue, and the orange type kyanite as part of regulating their emotional responses. Let me know if you've given it a go, is all I'm going to say. I'll move on because this video is getting very long. So a lot of people aren't aware that the heart chakra is actually two-tone. It's got two colours to it. And I find it interesting that a lot of people aren't aware of this. But there seems to be this big push that everything to do with the heart chakra has to be green. And just to put this into perspective for you, there is truth to that saying of before you can love somebody else, you have to be able to love yourself. And that doesn't mean to say that you love yourself as in I'm so wonderful and the rest of you aren't. This means about really genuinely caring and having love and understanding of yourself and self-awareness. And when we can actually respect ourselves and understand ourselves, we're far better placed to be able to understand and accept other people, understand their motives, and their limitations as well as our own. You know what I mean? So when it comes to pink kyanite, we're talking about opening this heart chakra to being able to receive this divine unconditional love of the universe. And that is the first step. Okay. Once we're able to understand and accept that actually we are lovable and we are loved, at the very least on a divine level, perhaps this leads to this questioning, when we're talking about healing, well, what is it about me that's lovable, because a lot of people are beating themselves up with guilt. Perhaps they didn't do things they wanted to do, or they look back in hindsight and think I wasn't the person I wanted to be, and if I had my time over, I would change, so they're full of regrets and that kind of stuff. So part of this is about, when we talk about self-love, it's accepting we are not perfect. None of us are perfect by the measure of a standard that somebody else puts up, okay? That doesn't mean to say that we're not perfect and divine creations, the manifest of the divine idea. We are all perfect. This is where that saying comes from, right here and right now. We are a perfect idea of the divine. As human beings, are we all perfect? I don't think any of us are these perfect people that are calm at all times, always loving. We are all always growing and developing, and we are all always being confronted with challenges, and we don't always respond to these challenges in ways that we actually admire within ourselves. Sometimes we might make errors of judgment, and that's okay, because this is what pink kyanite is teaching us, that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be a learner. It is okay to not meet other people's expectations, because at the end of the day, we're all growing, Sometimes it takes more than one try to do anything. So this is about accepting ourselves, accepting who and what we are right now, accepting that we can strive towards perfection and we can keep working. And, if you were talking about walking up a hill and you weren't fit at the time when you started, and you might have to stop and start, and sometimes you slide back down the hill and sometimes you get a bit further, this is all part of the journey of life, so there is this acceptance, and it is what it is, I guess. The self-awareness aspect comes in through understanding that, maybe we did make some mistakes, but were we operating from the best space, the best of intentions? Being honest with ourselves. Sometimes we weren't, and sometimes we were. Sometimes we were coming from a space of ego. Sometimes we were misguided. But you know what? As we develop our self-awareness, we understand what motivated us, and we learn what to let go of and what to hold on to. And throughout this entire process of opening our heart to the receiving of divine unconditional love, there becomes this extension of giving ourselves love, acceptance, and compassion that we would give to other people. And the other thing is, we grow in our sense of self-esteem, because even if we haven't done the best job, we've learned to be emotionally honest, and we go, you know what, I did okay. Tell somebody else to walk 10 miles in my shoes and then come back and let me know how they feel they went, because we're all, I guess, doing the best that we can at any given time. But either way, self-esteem grows. What I have learned for a long time is people with very low self-esteem. Sorry about this. Actually, I'll just give a scenario. I remember a lady asking me for a reading online, and she said to me, "Can I get a reading, please?" And she was a little disturbed at the time, shall we say. But she was a nice, sweet person, I might add too. And I sent back her a message and I said, "Look, I don't have time to do a reading right now." I said, "But what I can tell you straight off the bat," I said, "is that this is not a guided message. This is just an interpretation and understanding." I said, "You're actually really struggling with self-esteem." I said, "You've got very low self-esteem, low self-confidence, and I would be encouraging you to work on that." And she came back, with that little emoji where its mouth is wide open. "How did you know that?" And I said, "Because of the shade of pink that you're wearing in your photograph, and because you've chosen this photograph to represent who you are." And I said, "And that tells me that you're struggling with these issues." So we're talking about colour healing here as well. But it's very relevant. And getting back to pink kyanite, yes, I would suspect that this is all part of how pink kyanite can actually heal these issues. And just the reminder, anything kyanite, I believe, actually works very quickly, very rapidly. So if you've got some pink kyanite and you've given it a whirl, or if you're going to get some and you're going to give it a whirl, please do let us know how that worked out. And don't be shy to tell us where you got it from either. Actually, if you find a reputable supplier, certainly with a good price, I would be interested in knowing. So on this slide, I've got a couple of examples of affirmations, and there is so much that, we could build upon with this because we've got all these different colors of kyanite. What I would encourage you to do is actually go and have a look at the attribute that you're drawing upon in regard to whatever crystal color that you're using, and then modify it. And so just a reminder, if you're not familiar with affirmations in this way, you start with I am, you're making a statement, I am, and you're finishing with the I am, and then you make the statement in the positive. So I am loved, loving, and lovable. I am would be one that you could actually use for the green and the pink chakras, or pink kyanite. Then you could use the black and the blue. You could have this I am safe and protected in the divine way under grace. If you were using the green, I am open to strengthening my connection with the universe and the nature elements. I am, that's another one. You could also do things like I am open to and grateful for my connection with the earth, mother goddess, this kind of thing. These are just examples. If you've got other ones, feel free to write them in the description as well as a comment. I'll certainly respond to them if I see them. Thank you. If you've watched my other videos, you will know that I have, basically I call it a crystal lucky dip. It's a couple of bowls of different crystals, tumbles, small ones, that when I do a service, if I'm doing a distance service, I might put my hand into this lucky dip and pull a crystal for somebody. If I have them sitting opposite me, if they're present and it's a face-to-face, I'll get them to put their hand in and pull out a crystal. Now, if they were to pull out kyanite, I only have blue kyanite, so my message for them would be to pay attention to their intuition, and to be open to receiving information from their guides. Pay attention to their dreams as well, because they might be getting messages into their dreams. This is just for example. But if I had the other crystals, obviously I would adopt the message to the attributes of the crystals, like straight off the bat. If we were talking about black, if I had black and somebody put their hand in the box and pulled out the black kyanite, my first thoughts would be that you need to be paying attention to your aura. You need to be doing what I call spiritual hygiene, doing your cleansing, your clearing, and cutting away any cords of negative attachment and that kind of stuff, and paying attention to your personal boundaries. That would be what I take home from the black kyanite. The green kyanite would be basically to open your heart to forgiveness, to understand that everybody is operating from the limitations of their own human experience, and that includes perpetrators of violence actually towards other people. That everybody's a product of their environment. Does that make what they do okay? No, it doesn't. But I say no, it doesn't, but that's my judgment as a human being. But what I do believe is that the universe will take care of it. None of us escapes karma. But are we going to allow these people that hurt us to lock us down for the rest of our lives in suffering? Does that do ourselves or anybody else any favors? I don't think it does. By the way, I say this as a person who has experienced pretty high level betrayal as well. And I think forgiveness is actually an ongoing process a lot of the time. So I probably would enjoy having some green kyanite to help me get over some of my betrayals really deeply at that cellular level. And when I say that, maybe I should be working with the orange as well, In fact, actually, that would be, if somebody pulled orange kyanite and I had it, I would be encouraging them to look at phrasing their healing affirmations to include things like healing at a cellular level. That would be, so just a tip there. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. So, my friends, I'm going to call it a day on this video. That's I was going to say that's about all I can give you about kyanite, but actually, realistically, that's about all any of us can cope with today. I think there's just so much, you could go on and on. I could go on and on and on talking about the beauty of kyanite, but I won't today. I'll save you all from it. In the meantime, I just want to say, look, love you, leave you. Thank you for being part of my journey. I really hope that you're able to appreciate, I guess, that's not the right word, to find something of value in the information that I share with you, that perhaps it's something that you hadn't considered before, perhaps it's something that you're willing to try, perhaps you've already had an experience and you're willing to share that with us here on the channel. You know, I would be very grateful for that. But anyway, I'm going to love yous, leave yous, say thank you for being part of my journey. Take care. I'm going to catch you on the next video. Bye bye for now.